What if you could take that risk, make that change, reach that goal, live your best life? Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast, where we get together with amazing experts and everyday people who share challenges, encourage healing, and explore the possibilities that life has to offer. I'm your host, Gary Scott, and I'm excited that you're along for the ride. Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast, and all the way from Surf City, USA. I don't think you're in Surf City, USA, but whatever, is my buddy, Aaron Gamble. Hey, Aaron, how are you today, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Now, I think Surf City, USA is actually Huntington Beach, right? So I grew up in Orange County, I think that is. But you look like you got some serious surf right. Where are you?
Actually live in Venice Beach, Los Angeles.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you look pretty normal for living in Venice Beach. I've spent a lot of time there, brother. It's like you must be able to juggle or something. I don't know. But so guys, I'm gonna read Aaron's bio real quick, and we'll get cooking because he's got a great story and he's doing some amazing stuff. So, Aaron Gamble, a transformational life coach and speaker, grounding in one powerful truth: we are not the stories we tell ourselves. After spending 15 years working in the film industry, raising two kids, and silently carrying the weight of unresolved trauma and burnout, Aaron reached a breaking point that changed everything. What followed was the hardest and most beautiful transformation of his life. He went from nearly ending his life to discovering a new purpose rooted in healing, fatherhood, and emotional integrity. Today, Aaron coaches people who are standing at that same threshold, tired of the same old patterns and ready to lead their lives with presence, clarity, and truth. Through one-on-one coaching, men's group facilitation, and his upcoming program, Dad Mode Activated. I love that title. Can't wait to get into that. Aaron guides people back to themselves by helping themselves dismantle the inner narratives that keep them stuck. And wow, do we have a world full of messed up, stuck, burned out people right now, don't we, brother?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I
I know
think
it's
in
brutal.
particular men are in that space. It's it's
Not a
not the most amazing time to be a unhealthy man.
It is not. I can't wait to get into that because that's one of my favorite topics. But like I mentioned, I'm sorry I've already talked too much, but we are the What If You Could podcast. So I'll ask all my guests, Aaron Gamble, what is your What If You Could?
That is a great question. What if I could change the way we as a society view masculinity? That's really what has driven me through this shift that I've made because I wasn't living in my own healthy masculinity in my relationships, in my life as a father. And like you read, I had a giant shift. I like to call that shift sort of my dark night of the soul. And as a film guy, it kind of follows the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. And what what actually happened in that is I realized that I wasn't happy, that my I wasn't living my own true self. I was living a life that was being led by someone else. And that was the realization that I had that I needed to change. And unfortunately for me, and I again, unfortunately for I think of most other people, especially most other men, it took a very extreme experience for me to be able to see that shift. Um, you discussed it a little bit in my bio, but I nearly ended my life, and the one thing that kept me here was an image that popped into my mind of my two young kids who were 5 and 7 at the time, running around the coffee table in my living room, laughing and playing Uno. That popped into my mind the moment that I was ready to down a bottle of pills. And that particular image shifted. And I had this realization that if I ended my life, I would be leaving them without a father. And I would, in a way, be repeating some of the same generational traumas that I experienced growing up. And for the way my brain works, that was failure. So the next thing that I had to do is I had to make actually the biggest decision that I've ever made as a man and swallow my pride, let go of my ego, and check myself into a hospital. So I called my friend and he drove me to UCLA Medical Center and I checked myself into the behavioral health unit. And I spent 5 days in the hospital. Now, 2 days into that experience, my now ex-wife came to visit me, and she didn't come to offer support. She came to let me know that she was filing for divorce. So, in my perspective in that moment, I thought I had hit rock bottom. And then a trap door opened up and I fell a little bit farther. And and I say all these things because this is what actually needed to happen. And it sounds very doom and gloom, but I had to have these experiences in order to get to the place that I am today. So I'm actually, I'm not blaming anybody. I'm actually grateful for this experience, because I had to get to that place to realize that I needed to change. And that was what I was kind of talking about in the beginning of this, is that unfortunately for a lot of men, it takes an extreme event to see that realization, to start making those big changes. And had I not had that experience, I wouldn't be here talking on this podcast right now.
You touched on so many topics right there. But I think I just want to go back to the initial, which is masculinity. One of the things I talk about so much on this podcast is toxic masculinity. And the theme that seems to have popped up in the world, I mean, not just America, but Australia, Europe, I mean, it's madness that somehow being a provider, being an emotional man, being a authentic man, having feelings, expressing yourself, somehow masculinity has become bad. Why do you think that is? Why do you think we're in this weird, bizarre place with this?
Well, there's a couple of different ways that we could go about this. Um, what I like to say and what I tell men, in the men's groups that I facilitate, and some of the stories that I've written, is that, for us men, I can't speak for the female perspective, right? Like I'm a man myself. I have to stay in my lane. And I think that what has kind of happened for us men is that we have been taught a way of living that isn't necessarily like, it's a little archaic to how society is today. And two, it just isn't quite healthy. It's a bit toxic, And what I'm kind of getting at here is, I grew up with this mentality of you put your head down, you bury your emotions, and you work hard and provide for your family. Now, I can tell you, like, that was my mentality prior to nearly ending my life. And the biggest question that comes to me is what happens when you can't bury those emotions anymore?
Mm.
And that line of thinking is actually teaches men to fear opening up, that asking for support is failure. And you know, unfortunately, we live in a world that is still kind of believes that. Society still kind of runs on this this sort of view that men need to man up and you know separate themselves from their emotions, and but it's not physically possible. I like to think of it as like it's kind of like taking a Pepsi bottle and you shake it up. And everything that comes up in a man's life is shaking that bottle up a little bit and shaking that bottle up. You have an argument with your wife, it's shaking that bottle up. You somebody cuts you off on the street, when you're driving in traffic, you're shaking that bottle up. Eventually, that top's going to pop. So asking for support, having a men's group or a council of peers, it allows that pressure of that bottle to be released a little bit. It allows that those emotions that are being buried to come out a little bit. And so, what I try to do is I try to teach men different techniques, different tools to use that can help express some of that buried emotion. One of the easiest ones is to talk to a friend. And, I've been doing this little survey with a lot of the men that I work with and my friends and colleagues. And I'd ask men, how many friends do you have? And generally, it's about five. And
If
then,
you're lucky, if
if,
if if guys are lucky, it's five.
exactly.
That's a big number.
And then I ask a second question. Out of those five, how many do you feel you can open up to and talk about some of the things that are weighing on your shoulders? Generally, it's zero. That is a problem. And that's what the kind of stuff that I'm trying to teach that, you know, I said earlier, that making the choice to put myself in the hospital was the biggest decision that I had to make as a man because it really was the most humbling decision. And I could have just pushed it aside and kept going and maybe attempted to end my life again another time when things, you know, when that bottle was about to pop again. But I think true manhood comes in making those tough decisions and standing in your own integrity for your word. And that isn't an easy thing to do because that means that you have to make hard decisions. Um, it's
I
there's a
think some of
reason.
the
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think just the first two topics you touched on, you see so much suicide in the armed services, um, because men just, they're soldiers, man. They're macho. They serve our country. They don't go to people and talk. They just end it, right? When you see someone pull out their blues and lay them on the bed, you know something's going to be really bad. The other part of that is, you know, women are amazing about having women's group, going to women's coffee, having a group of friends, and they'll talk, right? Women will get together and talk about stuff. Men will get together and say, "Did you see that Yankees game, last week or whatever?" They don't want to go deep because it's not the manly thing to do. And so you got five friends, you can't talk to any of them, right? And you've got your wife, you really don't want to talk to her because that's a weakness, right? Because you want to be the big husband, you want to be that man, the leader, right? So you kind of don't want to tell your wife, hey, I'm really struggling with this stuff. So where do guys go, right? What do guys do?
There isn't a whole lot of places out there. Men's groups are becoming more important, like more popular than ever in the last few years. Um, but I think there's another level to this, and something that I'm creating myself, like personally, and I'm trying to figure out a way to share that with other men. But I think there's something that's really important is creating a council of peers, and what that means is not just a friend group. It's a small group of men that you all agree that you're going to hold space for each other to be able to express those deep things. Not only to be able to support each other, but also to hold each other accountable and to say the hard things that need to be said to that person. And it's something that is rarely unheard of. I heard somebody else call it the King's Council, which I thought was a very interesting way of putting it, of having the King's Council, because we were really taught to do everything alone, and getting back to what you were saying about the military is I actually think I agree with you 100%, but I actually think that it's all men. It's not just men in the military.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
Men are committing suicide 4 times more than women throughout the world. And in the
Mhm.
United States alone, it's the third leading cause of death for men 24 to 35. And it's you know, atrocious numbers. And I believe, I don't know if there's a study out there that quantifies this, but a lot of that has to do with loneliness, with not having those people to actually take a little of that pressure from that Coke, that Pepsi bottle, and releasing it. And
You
so
know, you back in the day, I mean, honestly, some of these things have been around for decades. I mean, the Knights Round Table is something that was around before that. And the Greeks and the Romans did a lot of this. And then there were mastermind groups for some of the most powerful people put together. So, historically, there have been these groups for men. I don't know how deep they went. I do know that I've been involved in a lot of mastermind groups and some men's groups. Um, and they're very, very powerful things. And especially if you can get some of them where you can be vulnerable, express the things that you need to. Um, but this thing about this 24 to 35-year-olds, whatever age gap you said, it's so bizarre that it's the most connected generation in the history of the planet is that age group. They grew up in this connectivity with all the social media and stuff, yet they are the ones who feel the most alone. It's a very bizarre situation for these kids, these men, boys, whatever.
think about it in this perspective. I heard this thing, and I've borrowed it. So I can't claim that it's my own, but there was a perspective that really shook me. And it's this idea that as men, we were raised by war veterans, who were raised by war veterans, who were raised by war veterans, who were all taught not to talk about the things that they have experienced, not to express those hard things that they experienced, right? So now you get generations of kids or young men who are being taught by modeling, parental modeling, to not actually talk about it. So it's a generational kind of like generational trauma almost that is happening. And so like my generation and the generations, the generations below me, like it's not necessarily their fault. And we don't need to place blame. It's just kind of how society has deemed like what men are supposed to be. And in 2025 and going into 2026, it's now starting to sort of come to a head. It's coming to a head in the amount of suicide that's happening. It's coming to the head with dating and relationships and women expressing so much more now how they don't want to be in relationships because they're having to parentify their partners, and it's I just think that we need more mentorship in the world. We need more healthy models for what men should be doing and can be doing. Um,
There's a safety net there in a men's group. I think that although that generation that you're talking about that seems to have the most challenges, 24 to 35, whatever that is, um, interestingly, they seem to be the generation that can share the most feelings. They're oversharing a lot of times. I just wonder about the authenticity of what they're sharing, how they're sharing it, vulnerability, wearing that mask of, I need to put myself out there like that if I'm going to fit in or whatever. And although they're sharing the most and they're the most open, how much of it is real? I mean, how much of it is authentic for what's happening with that generation? And and perhaps because they feel they've been inauthentic, that's when they think I'm just going to end it because I don't want people to see the real me because I've put out the fake me my whole life.
yeah, I I I agree. I think there's a small level of authenticity that comes in it, but I think what we're really kind of touching at is a false sense of connection.
Hmm.
And what that is in our society today with social media, uh, you know, we're more connected to the world around us than we ever have been before. And that's overwhelming. And that need for connection, I'm not sure how much you're involved in social media or like Facebook or Instagram or things like that, but there is an I there's kind of a little bit of trickery that happens in that you can see what's going on in someone's life through what they're curating for their feed, right? And you get a false sense that you're connected to what's happening in their life because you feel like you know what's going on. But real connection happens in person, having a real conversation. Or, I guess Zoom actually can be a form of it as well, but it's a live conversation. That's how connection happens. So I think what is happening here is people are getting a false sense of connection by posting and seeing other people's posts on social media, but they're not actually truly connecting. They're getting a dopamine hit from likes and from this false sense of actually connecting with an audience or with people. But when that dopamine hit wears off, there's no connection there. There's still a sense of loneliness. And it's almost like a false sense of loneliness because we don't feel like we're lonely because we're connecting with all these people. I have, 50,000 followers or whatever number it may be, but how many of those people are you actually sitting down and having coffee with? How many of those people are you actually sitting down and saying, "Hey, I need 5 minutes of your time because I'm freaking struggling right now." And so I think that's what's happening today. I actually believe that 2025 and 2026, the biggest term and the biggest need as a society is connection, is truly connecting with people.
I love what you said about mentorship. I have, I'm a real estate broker by trade, and I sold this young fella his sister's house. She had to be put in a home. And we just hit it off, right? He's 85. I'm 62. But he and I meet for coffee and just talk about the world. But he does it also with two men's groups. One is his Bible study group. They meet every Friday. They all share some scriptures and then they hug it out. They talk about other stuff. And then he's just got a purely men's group. And I just thought, that is so awesome. Here's a dude that's 85 with a bunch of his old war buddies. You know what? The oldest guy's 95 and the youngest guy's like 79. Um, but they're meeting in person at McDonald's or wherever, having coffee and talking it out. So I've sat in for a couple of these and I'm like, dang, you guys bring it. I'm, it was such a warm thing. It was such a comfortable thing. It's such a, I know that I could, after leaving, that I can call any one of those guys and say, hey, you know what, Bob? You know a lot of stuff. You've been around a long time. Um, I want to walk something by you. You know what I mean? I think that's what true mentorship is, don't you think? Where you could reach out to someone and say, hey, like you said, I'm struggling. I've got a little challenge here and I need to bounce it off of somebody.
Yeah. That's exactly, I mean, and I think what I try to teach men is the comfortability of being able to ask that question, because it's a really uncomfortable thing for us men to actually ask for support because it's viewed as weakness, you know, and but it's not weak. It actually, I think it's actually the opposite. It takes more of a man to humble yourself and say, "Hey, I need a little support here." Like that's really kind of like the true view of a real healthy masculine man, is to be able to step aside from whatever it is that he's struggling with and say, "Hey, can you help me?" You know?
There's a dude that you probably know because you're in that industry better than I do. I mean, I kind of know who he is, but I don't know. I'm sure I've seen him in something, but there's a dude named Ethan Hawke, and he wrote a book called Rules for Knights. And
Mhm.
apparently, this is the way the story goes. It's supposed to be true. They found this old fable somewhere from the 1400s, and it was one of his ancestors knew he was going to die in this battle, and he had two children, and so he wanted to sit down and write to them the rules of what it is to be a knight. Ethan Hawke, Rules for a Knight. Little tiny book. I frickin' love this book. And I literally am going to go get it for my boys and for other friends because it's just an old dude. And you could tell he's probably sitting there with a feather by candlelight writing
Yeah.
out this thing, right? It's just written so well, but his it's just rules for life that are so common sense. How to be authentic, how to be a man, how to be vulnerable, how to admit your mistakes, honor. I mean, things like this. It was such a powerful little book. I just love it. But I think that comes from he led men. He needed to take men aside. He needed to talk to them in in real ways, not just fake stuff that we do today. And that's how you reach people is by these types of conversations to a person, to another human, right? I mean, that's how you really can make those connections.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I actually wrote down that Rules of a Night. I'm gonna check that one out. I love that. Also a big fan of Ethan
It,
Hawke.
I keep it right. I keep it right here.
Love
I
that.
freaking, because I just go through it all the time. I mean, I've only had it for probably 2 months, but I've beaten the poop out of it. His wife actually did all the drawings. There's beautiful pencil stencil illustrations. I don't know if the story's true or not, but it's just such a wonderful fable. But I'm sorry I cut you off. Yeah, that mentorship that you talk about. So when you're doing your program, I do want to talk about the dad mode activated because I just being a dad of two boys about the same age in distance and age as your boys. My boys are 2 years, 16 months apart. Um, I want to get into that, but I want to get more into what you're doing with your work and with men, kind of how you started this and how is it being receptive? I mean, are men starting to be more receptive to opening up like this?
Yeah, I think so. It's it's a tough thing for men to want to open up. Again, we kind of talked about it already. Like women are way more used to asking for support, calling upon their female friends, having their own little women's group meetings and coffee and things like that. So it's I think as more of this information gets out there, it's going to start to shift the collective, and men will be a little bit more interested in asking for support. So it is a challenge, because I don't know if we're necessarily as a society completely there yet. Um, but for me, what I do is, I'm just being authentically me. I share my story. I speak often on what I went through and how I shifted my own life and the things that I've done. And I take that into my coaching because I believe that when you're authentic and you apply lived experience, that carries so much more weight than having a list of goals and things to you can we live in the day and age of internet. Like you can look up or ask ChatGPT to be your coach now, but ChatGPT doesn't have the lived experience that we have, and to be able to apply that in the form of metaphor or in life lessons that may have happened. So
ChatGTP does not understand empathy. It will give you a 900-page dissertation on mental health and how to deal with it and put groups together, but there's no empathy there. It has no life experience and it has no way of making a connection. But it'll tell you everything you need to know about it.
well,
But
it'll
that's not
also
good enough.
it'll also validate you in an amazing way that isn't necessarily healthy either, because it's validating a false sense of worth and need, and act as empathy, but it doesn't actually have empathy. But and that's, I think, where that human connection comes in, to be able to tell my story and find people who are in that same space, and for them to hear that I've been through that. I've gone through the trenches and came out. And I wrote a TED Talk speech that I'm in the process of applying for to try to get on TED Talk, that deals a lot with my own story and the shift. And in the speech, I recently changed this, but I used to say I was just an ordinary man, an ordinary guy who's gone through an extraordinary experience. Now, unfortunately, I've actually changed that. And what it is now I am an extraordinary guy that unfortunately has gone through an ordinary experience. Because
That
there's
that that nails it. The first one, yeah, but the second one, that's more authentic. That's more relatable, I think. I like that one.
it, it also is a sort of, an indicator of where we are as a society, where men are hurting and they don't understand how. And there are quite a few guys out there doing similar things that I'm doing now, but it's few and far between. So, some of the ways that I again, you know, doing what I'm doing is I have a men's group that I run first and third Mondays. Um, I share a lot of stuff on social media. I am getting close to launching this, particular niche program for dads. Um, but it's really just getting the information out, and letting men know that it's okay to ask for support, and you actually should. Um,
Yeah, I think the word ask, you came back to it again, is one of the biggest words. It's it's just so difficult. And I've shared this a bunch of times. I just asking for things is so difficult for me. And I think a lot of people, men and women, to not only ask for help or advice, it's just something about asking that is so difficult for us as humans. And I don't know why that is, but especially men. I could ask you to help me rotate my tires on my car or help me with the carburetor or whatever the hell dudes do with cars. I have nothing. No, don't know what car is. But you know what I mean? It's like stuff like that. It's like, dude, you want to come over and help me paint my house, you know? But to ask for something deep like that, to ask for help, um, it's really tough for dudes.
Yeah, it really is. And I know, and it's not necessarily our fault. We've just been trained. We've been programmed to not talk about that stuff. So literally you're in asking and doing what we just talked about right now, you're trying to rewrite a program that has been written for generations. So there's a little bit of grace that needs to come in that, that it's not an easy thing to do. And in asking for help, you're also being vulnerable. You're opening yourself up to vulnerability. And that's, as far as society is concerned, that's a mortal sin of being vulnerable.
It's funny what you say about how asking is inherently, drilled into us. I mean, you could think about it. You could, mom and dad in the store, stop asking for this, or stop asking your uncle for something, or stop asking this, or stop. You're just berated all the time as a kid. Stop being at. Kids should be seen and not heard. Stop asking for this, or stop, which is such a tragic way to turn off someone's curiosity, someone's ability to feel seen, someone's ability to be heard. It's like you said, it starts so early. It's like the rug's pulled out before we even have a chance to process why we're not supposed to ask for something.
Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the main things that I teach men who are stepping into fatherhood for dad mode activated is presence. And the presence starts with your partner who is pregnant and showing up and being present for them and having conversations with your partner, the mother of your soon to be children, of what you can do for them to make them feel supported. Um, I'm also a big advocate, and this goes for dads who already have kids that may be young, is to put your phone down. Put your phone down. Every time your kid is around you and you're on your phone, you're telling your child that whatever's on that phone is more important than them. Even taking your phone out and setting it on the table upside down is telling your kids that that thing is more important than the conversation we're going to have, at the dinner table. And I'm not perfect. Like I catch myself doing it all the time. And honestly, my kids are pretty good about it. Like children are the best mirrors. Like my son is great about calling me out. Like, put your phone down, dad. Like and he's like my biggest accountability buddy because
And you can't bullshit a kid, man. You just can't do
no,
it. They will call you out. But you said,
100%. Yes.
the thing about the presents is so important, and we used to have a lot of parties and a lot of dinner parties and parties for anything. We didn't care, Groundhog Day, whatever. And on the invitation, we'd always put, your presence is your gift. Don't bring anything, just bring you. And as we got later into stuff, we'd say, that's the phone basket. Drop that phone in there, dude. You're not taking pictures, you're not doing video. We can all take pictures later, but while we're having dinner, I want to engage with all of you. And I could see you doing it. Like you said, it's like, it was just a quick peek. I swear to God, I just took a quick peek. It's like, no, man, just put the phone away. And you go into a restaurant, you see a family of four, and all four of them are like this. All four of them, mom, dad, the two kids. You go, when's the last time you even talked to your kid? I mean, do you even know what's going on with your son or your daughter? Do they know what's going on with you and mom? You know what I mean? I mean, presence is so important.
It's the number one. It's the number one thing. And it starts by committing to be present with your partner before you're even having the child. And that's really that's one of the things in Dad Mode Activated. I'm also really big on parental modeling, and we've kind of talked about it. You talked about it a little bit in how our parents, tell us, don't ask for this. You're seen and not heard. Um, there's also this sort of idea that as kids, we I believe the time frame is from 2 to 9 years old is when our view of relationships, of manhood, womanhood, femininity gets imprinted into our psyche, into our subconscious. So what I like to call that parental modeling. And your first real form of getting that information into your psyche is of your parents. So one thing that I noticed throughout my own, marriage and divorce and the my friends and colleagues is, we were the first of our friend group to have kids. So I got to watch our other friends have kids after us. And what I was able to kind of see was what we when we show up as a parent is either directly related to how our parents raised us or the opposite, depending on how good of a childhood you had, right? And there are variations in between that because nothing is really black and white. But if you go and, what happens is when that baby comes, that's when those kind of expectations start laying out. Like for example, I'll give you a great example. It's like the nuclear family, right? Like that old version that is it's not around anymore, but the dad was the provider and the mother was the caregiver, and she was a stay-at-home mom, and she took care of all of the child rearing and the dinners and all the things. And dad was just at work and would come home and play with, shake Johnny on the head and sit down for dinner. What happens is if both of the people who are about to have a baby grew up in that same environment, then they're going to have those same expectations that's how your partner is going to show up. And it may not work out. But if you grew up any different, like say for example, the mother was the primary provider and the father was more of a caregiver, then that expectation is going to be now put onto that partner. So when that's not being fulfilled, then that starts to form resentment in your relationship. And
Yeah,
what I
it's
like
so
to
funny
do,
what you said. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, it's okay.
No, I was just thinking because it's like me and my brother, although he's a stepbrother. I mean, we were like, he's 10 years older than me, so it's a weird. We weren't friends growing up, or we weren't even close growing up because it's just the age difference. He was a stepbrother too. We're really close now, but I was the latchkey of all latchkey kids, right? I didn't have a latch or a key. I mean, he's coming home and there's just an echo in the house. It's like I think we all live here. I don't know. I haven't seen anybody, but so he and I both went way the other side, right? We're like, no, we're not going to be these absentee parents. My parents didn't even remember what my birthday was, right? And I'm not whining. I'm just saying it, right? And so you
Same.
know what I'm talking about,
I
right?
know
So
exactly what you're
so
talking
we
about.
went like way the other way. Like I'm going to coach all their stuff. I'm just going to be right there. And we did. And our kids, he's got five kids. I've got two kids. It's just like they're so close. We're just so tight. I'm blessed that he lives close, in Orange County. But yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. You either model what you know, but I think a lot of us, you and I generation, kind of went, no, man, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that to our kids. We're going to, but the the challenge with that is some people went so far over that now we have these children who don't, they're kind of lost. It's like they didn't get discipline. They didn't get rules for a night. There were things they didn't get because their parents wanted to be so much the other way that it kind of hurt the kids more than helped the kids.
Definitely, definitely. And that's something that I've talked about a lot in there's a lack of resilience that comes with the younger generations. And it's not their fault. And I don't want to place blame on the younger generation, but I grew up in the tail end of the Gen X independent latchkey kid kind of environment. And where, like our front door was locked. Like you couldn't actually get in the house. You had to go to the neighbors to go to the bathroom or pee outside because you weren't getting in your house. Like, but because we had that experience, what ends up happening is it's these pendulum swings that we grew up in an environment over here that was so independent that you had to be, you had to do everything on your own. Like if you fell on your bike and broke your leg, you had to walk your broken leg tail all the way back home, bang on the door to get mom to unlock it, to tell her that your leg's broken and you need to go to the hospital, right? And that's traumatic. So the other side of that pendulum, that swing to this side now is sort of like almost a helicopter parenting where these
Bubble
kids
wrap. We're bubble wrapping our kids.
yes, and that's what kind of happens in these environments. So, my kids are younger. Like my kids are now 10 and 8 years old. And what I'm trying to do with them is kind of find this middle ground to give them independence, but not so much independence that, they feel isolated. One of the, I have a daughter, my youngest is a daughter and is my daughter. And she, one of the biggest, mantras that I have in our house now, and I've really been leaning into this lately, is we can do hard things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when there's some adversity that comes up, when my daughter is having a hard time, it's with homework or whatever it is, there's as a kid, and this is just how our minds work, they ask for help, which is great. I'm going to give them help, but I'm not going to do it for them. And we're going to have a conversation about things can get hard and you have to push through that adversity and get it done, because we can do hard things. We're capable of doing hard things.
Yeah. You and I would come home if we could get home. And it was like, I hope there's food somewhere here, toaster leavings, or there's got to be some mac and cheese laying around or something. And so I raised my boys to cook. I'm like, dude, I had to cook. You're going to learn to cook, right? I mean, dad'll make you anything you want, but you're going to help me. You're going to cut onions. And now both my boys love to cook, right? But I didn't learn how to cook. I mean, I was lucky if there was food to cook, right? So I think like what you're saying is like, look, I'm here to help you always, of course. I'm your dad. I love you. I'm always here. Yet I'm not going to do everything for you because that doesn't help you long term. That doesn't help you in any sense of the word.
Right. It doesn't. And unfortunately, we have a generation that I see this happen a lot. I interact with a lot of the, 30-year-olds, early 30s, that don't understand like what real resilience is. And just, I had a conversation with somebody recently, of a client of mine, and he was, he lost his job, and we were working on different ways and to be productive to get a new job, and we were kind of, I was kind of really kind of pushing him pretty solidly because he needed it in that moment of all these different ways to get out and find a job. And at one point, he just kind of got frustrated, and he goes, I just wish somebody would just drop a job in front of me. And and to me, I didn't say anything in that moment, but I just remembered that, and it really kind of sat with me for a second, and I was like, that is the defining factor of that generation, unfortunately. And it's a hard thing to teach when you didn't experience it. It as a kid, and and also it's a hard thing to not even recognize that that is a thing, and
Yes.
so it's, I don't want to place blame or call, like call that generation lazy or anything like that. They just weren't taught, like they didn't have the upbringing that we had, where we had, that swing of the pendulum went so far into the independence that you kind of had to do it. And I think we all can learn a little bit, a little bit from these different generations, and that's where we kind of circle back to that mentorship. And
I think a bigger challenge even that I see with that generation, because I have a 32-year-old and a 31-year-old. They're either 30 and 32 or they're 30 and 31 because they're only 16 months apart. So for some part of the year, they're only 1 year apart.
yeah,
And I see a lot of their friends because they all grew up at our house. We were the kids' house. I'm like, dude, you guys do whatever you want. We got the pool, we got the ranch, but everyone comes here, right? You can play, do whatever you want. I want everyone here so I can watch what's going on. So we were the kids' house. And so I know all these kids now that they're in their 30s. And the biggest challenge I have with a lot of them is it's not just the lack of gumption and resistance, and I just let that job fall, but it's the lack of curiosity. Like I ask them, well, because they're like, I don't have a job and I'm trying to get a job and this and that. I go, well, what do you want to do? What gets your fire going? What are you excited about? If you knew you couldn't fail, what would you want to do? And they don't even know. And I think that's what kind of hurts me the most. It's like there has to be something that you're passionate about because you can't chase money, right? You can't chase fame. You can't chase any of that stuff. You have to do what you love to do and the money will follow. So that's a real tough thing for a lot of these kids.
I don't know. I don't know where that comes from, but that's definitely something that gets burned into kids' psyche. And I don't know if it's like, you know, school system or trying to train people to work on the, be factory workers or whatever it is, but we lose a sense of wonder and a sense of like what it is that you really like. I tell my kids often that, when you get older, somebody's going to tell you what you should do all the time. They're going to tell you that you need to be a doctor. They're going to tell you that you need to be a lawyer. But what I want you to do is I want you to think about what really makes you happy. Because if you're thinking about what really makes you happy now, you have the opportunity to move in that direction as a career. And then it won't be work. It'll be fun because that's what you're excited for doing. My son is 10 years old, and at one point I laugh at this because he feels like he's got his life figured out already at 10, which is amazing.
I love it.
He told me one day, he goes, Dad, he goes, I'm gonna be an engineer, I'm gonna make rockets, and I'm gonna work for NASA. And I was like, that's
Sweet.
amazing. And the first I did that same question. I was like, does that truly make you happy? And he was like, yeah, yeah, dad, building stuff. Like that makes me happy. Like, and he's a huge Lego kid, right? Always building, right? And then he tells me, he goes, or he goes, then I'm gonna surf for fun. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna surf for fun, and I'm gonna work on rockets. I was like, sounds great, buddy. Let's go. Like
That's
I love it.
awesome.
You got it figured out.
That's awesome. I love the word that you said though was wonder. The loss of wonder. And I think, we're trying not to blame anybody or anything, but I think in a lot of the school system, kids are taught what to think. They're not taught how to think. And I think that's really been pretty detrimental the last decade, is just taught, hey, you got to do this to pass your SATs. You got to do this to get this. You got to do this to get into college because everyone has to go to college. I have no reason why everyone has to go to college, but everybody has to go to college, right? So you have to do this to get that. But it takes away that sense of wonder, right? And I think your son wanting to build rockets is so awesome because there's so many things that go with that. I'm going up into space. I mean, what's into space? I mean, where do we go from there? How many planets can we hit? I mean, that's such an awesome thought pattern that he has. And then I'll make money doing this, and then I'll just go surf in my spare time. Winning.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was amazing, but I really like, I'm trying to instill this idea in both of their heads that like figure out what you love. It's
Yeah.
not something that you think is going to, make a lot of money or make you famous, but like, do you truly love that? Is that really what lights you up? And that's the question. Is like, what lights you up? What makes you
Yeah.
excited? I didn't have that growing up. Like I lost that, and I spent a lot of my 20s and 30s like running away from childhood traumas that I experienced, and partying my tail off. And, you know, I, I had lost that sense of wonder. And, luckily I found my way and, realized that I had a love for movies. But now I look back on that now. It's like, did I really have a love for movies, or did I just really love the disassociation of what a movie does?
Right.
So I'm unpacking that kind of stuff now. And I love to, you know, I fully pivoted in my career, and I feel like I now am in the place that I'm supposed to be. Having these conversations and having deep conversations with people and educating and teaching and instilling ideas of how to be a healthier, better person. Like that's what really lights me up.
Yeah. And it's a very, very healing sort of, like I've told my kids forever, a gal, God, I've said her name a million times, but she wrote a book called Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow. And I don't know, it's from like the 70s. Do what you love and the money will follow. I gave it to my kids and I've talked about it forever because it's so true. I mean, you can't chase the money, to chase your passion. I mean, Elon Musk is going to be a trillionaire, but I don't think he set out to be a trillionaire. He just geeks out on all this stuff. So what's your goal for dad mode activated? What's your goal for that? What do you want to do? What are you doing with that?
Dad mode activated is on a whole, it's shifting how fatherhood and manhood is taught to children. Um, a lot of the programs, a lot of the curriculum within Dad Mode Activated is teaching sort of conscious communication, how to have clear conversations, how to ask for support, how to ask, you know, what can I do to support you, or what does support look like for you? Um, so as a on the grand scheme of things. So what I have now is I'm about to launch a workshop that will then, as we go through the workshop, as if men are interested in deepening this type of work into fatherhood, it there's a longer course that gets more detailed into what exactly it is. But the main goal is to, or the undercurrent goal, I guess, is to create a support system for men to help other men. So, you know, one of my what I would love to do is to be able to create a system that's similar to Mommy and Me. Everyone knows about Mommy and Me. And
Hmm. Hmm.
you know, as I was, I have a little side tangent that I'd love to share with you. Is as I was writing this, and I'm fully, this program is in my head, and I'm I was on my way walking to go pick up my kids from the school up the street, and this woman stopped me, and she goes, "Oh my gosh!" She goes, "I know you." She was like, "Your son is Asher, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like, how do we know each other? Are we, are you like a parent at the school? She's like, "No." She goes, "I was in Mommy and Me with your wife, and my son Lucas over here, who was like playing basketball, was born at the same time. And I remember going to the first, second, and third birthday parties because our kids were all around the same age." Randomly out of the blue, 9 years later, this woman recognizes me because of Mommy and Me, right?
Wow.
So what I want to do is I want to be able to create that system that brings that for dads. And and so dads can call on other dads that have been through this program and say, "Hey, I'm going through this developmental marker right now with a brand new newborn, and I'm struggling. Like, what did you guys do?" Or the ability for men to be able to take their babies on a Saturday and go meet at the park or at a beer garden that has an outdoor section, and all the dads can go meet up and talk about being dads, and give mom a little bit of a break so she can go do some sort of self-care activity for herself to feel a little bit more, filling her cup up a little bit. So, to answer your question, really, it's about creating connection, and about creating a system where dads can be more involved with their kids and their partners, but also to be able to go through an experience together and connect as fathers.
Oh man, I love that so much. I was just so close with my boys growing up. We had a little ranch and we didn't have television. I turned off the television and we just had to spend time outside, with the animals and doing stuff. And we were always together. And now, like my son and I, when we golf, we make sure we bring his now just now 1 year old and his 3 year old. We just strap a car seat into the golf cart, man. It's like you're going with us and we're gonna and now his 3 year old as well. I'll putt for you, Grandpa. I'm like, go for it. You'll probably do better than I can because I suck putting anyway. So, but it's just that time together, like you said, the presence, and then when we're out there and he's watching us hit and the exercise, I'm like, dude, that butterfly just landed on the green. What should we do? I don't want to hurt him. He's like, let's go chase him out, just these little moments. And when I talk to some of my son's friends that are now just having kids and stuff, and they're going through all these struggles, I say, this is easy for me to say, right? Because I'm old and we hate these old guys you say in my day. But all I got to tell you is this is going to be over so fast. They're only this age once. I don't care how hard it is, right? They're only going to be this age once. And then they're going to be this age. And before you know it, they're going to be your age. And you just have to suck it up, man. You just, not suck it up. I don't mean, oh, but enjoy that moment, even the tough ones. But to have the other dads to work with, like what you're doing, is just, Yeah, Trace Atkins is a music singer called Trace Atkins,
Hmm.
and he's got this song called "You're Going to Miss This." And he talks about his kids growing up. It's a country song. You're gonna miss this. And I'll tell you what, man, love that song. It's so good. It's so true. But having the support of other fathers like you're doing, having this ever go and say, I've tried to change this diaper like 4 times, man. I swear to God, I just can't figure out how to change this diaper. Walk me through this because I still can't change a diaper and I got grandkids. So, I mean, it's just such a special thing for dudes to do together, you know?
There's also one other thing that I failed to mention, and this is, I think, pretty important. I'm a divorced dad, so I split my time with my kid, my kids and their mom. Honestly, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, Gary, like a lot of the stuff that I put into this program possibly could have saved my marriage, because I believe that there, I don't know the exact statistics, but the numbers for divorce after having a child goes through the roof. And so what I would love to do is to be able to teach men a style of communication, and to ask questions and start to talk to their partners before you get into the throes of parenting. So you can allow these conversations to be had, so you know where you're at, so it doesn't become resentment and start pulling your relationship apart. Because the the union, the relationship, the partnership that you have, there's a tendency for that to split apart when you have a kid, because you're not the only, you're not the only being in that world now. You have a child, and that relationship becomes secondary. And if you add a little bit of resentment into that dynamic, it creates a need to split apart. And so a lot of what I put into this program also has to do with honoring that relationship, and cementing that bond, and learning how to create space for each other, and do the things that it takes to release that Pepsi bottle of pressure that's happening. So you can continue living a happy life, because it goes fast. But
Goes
it's
very
also
fast.
it's also really hard. Like, parenting is not
Very,
easy.
yeah.
So
And to kind of, you kind of brought it first full circle there because there is a masculinity aspect, but then you also talked about, these 30-year-old gals are like, I don't even want to date these guys because I don't want to be their parent. I don't want to be this 30-year-old guy's parent. The dude has no social skills, no man skills. And you see that over and over. And so if you do get into that relationship with that dude, it's like now the baby comes along and he's like, well, what happened to me? You're not babying me anymore because now you've got this baby. So what about me? Wah, wah, wah. It's like, dude, this is when we step up. You guys came into this in agreement, hopefully. Hopefully you did the parenting agreement. Hopefully you've had some communication on where this is going to go. So, but guys don't, right? So you having this course or you putting together this work, that's going to help guys understand, you know, this is a team here. You have to be there for your wife. She has to be there for you. You both need to be there for your child because there is no greater gift than raising a child. I don't care. And I really didn't want to get into your divorce thing because I know it's a touchy subject. I have a lot of friends who divorce and split the kids and stuff like that. And wow, that's an area that really needs discussion because you've got children that are being harmed by parents who can't get their shit together and can't communicate. And having dudes in a group where one guy can call out another guy lovingly, right? So you
Oh
keep
yeah.
bringing this to the group. And bro, let me tell you, I've been there, man. What's going on is not healthy. Let's work on some way to get this resolved with what you're going through. So I love it. It's such a necessary thing. The men's training that you're doing, the dad's training that you're doing. I know there's a couple of groups out there. I've talked to a number of dudes who are doing this, but it's so crucial. Aaron, I just hope that it takes off for you.
It's my passion, so I'm leaning in, just like that book that you talked about. Like, if you love it, the money will come. Yeah,
Oh,
that
that
one
book.
too.
Yeah. 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 That one. Yeah. Oh God, her name is on just the top of my tongue. I've talked about this book a million times. But yeah, it's just called Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow You. It's from like
Yeah.
70s or 80s. Um, but one last question. You've been so gracious with your time. I'm sure I've gone way over, but I said I had one question, but I lied because dudes lie. Um, I have a last question, and that last question that I always ask my guests is, what would be a message or a thought or something that really means something to Aaron in his heart and his soul, um, that you would like to share with us before we get out of here? You have a last thought for us?
Yeah. Um, I guess this goes out to all of those men out there that may be feeling like they're really struggling and in a life transition. First thing I want to say is, like, you're not broken and you're not alone, and that you can ask for help. And asking for help is not weakness. There are plenty of there are a lot of ways to ask for help. If you're hearing this, you could call me. I'm here to help. Um, but I just want everyone to know that you don't have to go out this alone. That's it. You just don't have to go at it alone.
That's a great message, brother. Because we come into this world alone and we go out alone, but that doesn't mean we have to spend our time here alone. And it also means that we have to try to let go of some of these old wounds, this old trauma. I've carried a lot of grief with losing my wife. It's destroyed me over the last decade. I call it the lost decade because it's been a lost decade. Um, and having people to reach out to, understanding that it's okay to ask, right? And especially for guys, man, just ask, get with your brothers, get with these groups. So, Aaron Gamble, where can people meet you? Where can they find you? Tell us all just your social, your websites, and tell us all this stuff so that men can reach out and find you and start getting some help.
Yeah, well, I run the Wolf Den Men's Group, which is the first and third Mondays of the
Did you say
month.
Wolfgang?
The Wolf
Wolfgang's men's
Den,
group?
the
Oh,
Wolf
Wolf
Den,
Den. Okay.
the Wolf Den Men's Group,
Wolf
because
Den. Okay.
I'm trying to shift the lone wolf syndrome, because we don't
Love
have to
it.
be lone wolves. You can come to
Love
the
it.
Wolf Den men's group. You can find me on my website. It's aarongamble.com. That's GAMBEL.com. Um, I'm very active on social media, as far as, Instagram. It's at Aaron M. Gamble, TikTok as well. And I also recently write for Substack. I've been writing a newsletter and several articles for Substack, and you can find me at substack.com/Aaron Gamble.
Awesome. And you said you're on Facebook too, right? I think I friended you or follow you or something like that.
Yes, I'm also on Facebook. I always forget about that one. Yes. Um,
Whatever it is that we do on Facebook, friend, follow, whatever. Aaron Gamble, you've been awesome. Love your story. I'm so glad that that vision of your children popped into your head and you didn't eat that bottle of Xanax, because the world would have missed out on a really awesome dude who's going to help a lot of men, which is going to help a lot of women, which is going to help a lot of families and children. Because we have to do it together, right, brother? I mean, we have to.
yes, exactly.
Right on, right on. Everybody, you've been gifted with some time with Aaron Gamble. Please look him up. You can find him on all the socials, all the platforms, or at aarongamble.com. And I'm very grateful he was here. And thank you so much, my friend, for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Cool biz. All right, guys. See you later. Thank you. Thanks again for joining us on another episode of What If You Could podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and give us any feedback. We'd love to hear it. And remember, if you can dream it, you can do it. See you next time.